On today's show, well, that was a bad loss for the Cavs. We'll talk about last night in Philly, what went wrong, and of course, Ty Jerome's big night as well on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like 92.3 The Fan, my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure they're subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube right now, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode, of course, sponsored by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Also, Locked On Cavs does have a newsletter introducing the Locked On Cavs daily newsletter, your one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. The Cleveland Cavaliers lose on Friday night to the Philadelphia 76ers, 132-129. There's a lot to dig into from this game on the defensive end of the floor in particular, because it was not pretty. And I don't know if this was necessarily the worst defensive game the Cavs have played this year, but I think that calling it anything other than that, or saying that maybe there's a game that was slightly worse, is just getting nitpicky. Like, it was really bad on that end of the floor. Nothing the Cavs tried worked against the Sixers. And Philadelphia, to their credit, they made, I thought, more so in the first half than the second half. I did think Philly made some tough shots. I mean, they were a just absolute red-hot team from beyond the arc. They had season highs in three-pointers made with 21. The previous high was 20. Now, tonight, they only needed 39 attempts to get to 21 makes. Philly's previous season high, they made 23-pointers on 51 attempts. So you can do the math there, but that's a much higher percentage. It's a percentage over 50% that the Cavs allowed the Sixers to shoot from deep. And some of these, you give them credit, you shake their hand. I know Eric Gordon made a 30-footer. I thought Paul George made some that were pretty heavily contested, but there were other ones that were not heavily contested. And there were other ones that were created because I thought overall the Cavs perimeter defense was pretty bad in this game. I thought that they got beat off the dribble by Tyrese Maxey, by Paul George, at times by Eric Gordon. Like, they got off and especially talking about Tyrese Maxey, who has had a solid year. Paul George hasn't been very good this year, but those guys still are really good players, and they're going to win some of those battles. But I just thought, throughout the night, the Cavs were losing defensive battles to guys they have no business losing defensive battles to. And that turned into the Sixers generating a lot of really quality looks in a way that I think we see happen against the Cavs, maybe a little bit too much. Now, the Cavs have been better since December 1st than they were in November as far as opponent three-point percentage. Friday night is not going to help that, certainly. But the one thing the Cavs do well, and I guess did do well tonight, is they limit the three-point looks that teams are going to get. Like, if you want to say that Philly got hot and it was luck, fine. I don't agree with that. But the one thing the Cavs did, they limited the Sixers to 39 attempts. Now, when a team's going to make 21 of those and just shoot a ridiculous percentage, that does mean, one, they got hot, and you give them credit for that. But two, that there's an issue defensively. And I think that there are a few issues with this team right now. I think perimeter defense is one of them. The Cavs miss Caris LeVert. The Cavs miss Isaac Okoro. I'm going to talk about those guys and Evan Mobley, of course, coming up a little bit later in the show. But this was something that Philly's not a good offensive team. They came into Friday night 24th in the NBA in offense. And of course, you can make the case they're a different team when Joel Embiid plays. I think when all three of Embiid, Maxey, and George start and finish a game, the Sixers are 6-1, which more so speaks to how rare it is that those three are all healthy, because it just doesn't happen. But Joel Embiid didn't play in this game. He wasn't available. They had several guys that were out due to injury. Now, you could make the case that maybe some of those guys, like a Kyle Lowry or an Andre Drummond, aren't necessarily additive at this point in their career. But this was, in my opinion, an inexcusable loss for the Cavs. I thought that this Cavs team, and they looked good offensively. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they hit 25 threes in this game. They did a lot of good things offensively. The backcourt combined between Donovan Mitchell and Ty Jerome and Darius Garland, those three combined for 96 points in the Cavs loss. And I think that's kind of what makes this loss inexcusable, is that they went out and they scored 129 points. They looked good on offense. Donovan Mitchell had a really good game. Ty Jerome had an awesome game, and I will talk about him more in depth in segment number 3. Darius Garland, I thought, played well. But to get that kind of effort, to get that kind of production from the backcourt and not be able to finish the deal because this team can't get stops right now. I mean, the start of the fourth quarter, and I posted about this, the start of the fourth quarter, in the first 3 minutes, the Sixers had 5 possessions in the first 3 minutes of the fourth quarter. So from the 12-minute mark to the 9-minute mark, and Kenny Atkinson called timeout right around 9 minutes. They scored on every trip down the floor. The Cavs could not get a stop. The Sixers went 4-4 from the floor, made 2 free throws. 2 of those shots were from beyond the arc. So they scored 12 points. And like, the Cavs offense was humming. But the Cavs can't take advantage of how good their offense is if they don't get stops. They are going to sometimes win games because they can just outscore opponents. And most nights, if you play this game over 10 times, the offensive effort the Cavs gave in terms of production, I say effort, I'm not talking about like how hard they're trying. I'm talking about just the performance. That's a synonym I use. But the offensive performance that they had on Friday night was good enough to beat Philly 9 out of 10 times, no matter what the defensive performance was. But that is not an area that I think that you want to play around. You don't want to have, we could score 129 points and lose. Like, that's not a place you want to be. That's not a healthy place for a basketball team to be in. But the unfortunate reality is that's where the Cavs are right now. They are a team that, despite having, and I get it because they're not fully healthy, so this isn't entirely fair to say about them right now, but this isn't a new problem. It's not as if the Cavs just decided on this random Friday night in January that the defense is going to be really bad this night and this night only. This has been something that has been inconsistent throughout virtually the entire season. They've been very up and very down. There have been times they've been awesome. There have been other times they've been bad. Tonight, they were bad. That's who the Cavs have been so far this season. And it's not just that it happened against Philly on Friday night. It's that, against Minnesota last Saturday, a team that is bad offensively, just like how the Sixers are bad offensively. I mean, Philly came into this game, as I mentioned, 24th in offense, and they scored 132 points. The Timberwolves are a team that the Cavs played last week. They're not a very good offensive team. They scored 117 points in that game. Now, to be fair, some of those were garbage time, so maybe that's not the best example. OKC scored 134 points. They had 119 points after the third quarter in that game. There are a lot of examples that you can pull to, even going back to the day after they beat OKC. The Raptors scored 126 points. Now, the Cavs won because the Cavs are an offensive juggernaut. But I don't think that they can win a title without this defense getting to a much healthier, much better place than it is. And maybe that happens when they're healthy. This game, I think it's easy to overreact to, and I think it's a game that's probably very frustrating for the guys inside that locker room. I know it's very frustrating for the fan base, and I get all of that. This game does not change whether or not the Cavs can win a title or not, but I think very clearly shows what exactly is going wrong with them right now. And part of it, too, I do think can be attributed to, it is late January. This month feels like it has gone on forever. The Cavs might be a team that's ready to get to the All-Star break because they've expended a ton of energy in the first half of this season. And maybe they just need a few days off. And they're not going to get it because they have to play now tonight against the Houston Rockets in a game that I think is pretty important, considering the Cavs have not lost 3 games in a row all season. But the defense is just not where it needs to be. And it's something that I can't quite figure out, because in terms of the pieces defensively, and I know that they were not all out there tonight on Friday. I get that. I'm not speaking solely about the game against the Sixers. But this is a team that has Jarrett Allen, who, I don't know that he's going to make all defense, but he'll probably get an all defense vote or two. Evan Mobley is going to make all defense, and I know he didn't play. Dean Wade, who, of course, got hurt on Friday night, but you still have to talk about him as a really good defender. Isaac Okoro hasn't played in a while. We won't mention him. Caris LeVert's a really good defender. Max Strus is a really good defender. This team is filled with really good defenders, and they're not a really good defense. And that, to me, is something that I can't quite make sense of because I know it's there. I know that what they're capable of defensively is not what we have seen. And we saw basically the exact opposite of what they're capable of defensively on Friday night. This was one of the worst defensive performances the Cavs have had all year. And there's no other way around it. They are a team right now, though, that is not healthy. And we need to talk about that because this is a team that I think in the worst way needs to get healthy soon. So we'll do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app, easy to navigate, and the variety of bets because there are a variety of bets. You want to bet first touchdown score in the championship games this weekend. You want to bet, maybe you want to bet no touchdowns. Maybe you're that kind of person where you're just, man, looking at Kansas City, looking at Buffalo, 2 MVP caliber quarterbacks. No one's going to score a touchdown. I bet you can get pretty good odds on FanDuel there, but you can find that on FanDuel. And when you win with FanDuel, you get paid instantly. You don't have to wait around for your winnings to show up, whether you're betting on your favorite team, which maybe you are doing that. I'm not. My favorite team went 3-14. Or you're just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. So visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. Again, FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. And the Cavs are not a team right now that anyone would say is healthy, but they are missing Evan Mobley, which is obviously the biggest absence on the floor right now because he is, in my opinion, going to be named an Eastern Conference All-Star in less than a week from now. And he is the most important player maybe on this team. Certainly, I think to what this team's ceiling is, Evan Mobley is the most important player. And he's not played in the last, 4 games now because of a calf injury that Kenny Atkinson said earlier this week is an injury that he looks at as day-to-day. We'll see if he plays on Saturday against the Rockets. I don't know. I do think it's a good sign that he was on the trip with the Cavs. You could see him on TV sitting on the bench. I think when an injured player is still traveling with the team, that's typically a pretty good sign that it's not going to be some long-term thing. So that's what the Cavs have going for them in that situation. But the Cavs miss him a lot because we talk about this team having an embarrassment of riches, if you will, in the front court, having 2 all-star caliber guys. Evan Mobley, like I said, I think is a lock to make the All-Star team. I'm not so sure Jarrett Allen will make the All-Star team, but I think he's an All-Star caliber player. Having 2 of those guys that essentially can overlap at the same position is obviously an incredibly valuable thing to have. But when one of those guys goes out, that depth, I think, disappears really quickly at that spot, right? Like Tristan Thompson trying real hard out there. And Tristan Thompson, I thought, did an okay job. But when the Cavs go through stretches of games, not stretches just like 3 or 4 minutes here or there, with only one true big on the floor, they're able to do some things differently. And maybe sometimes the offense is a little bit better when that's the case. But defensively, they slip a little bit. And they particularly slip in the rebounding area. Now, if you want to go back to this earlier this week, you can say, well, Danny, they absolutely destroyed the Phoenix Suns on the glass. And you're right, they did. That was a really impressive effort. That was one of the best games the Cavs played all year long. But since then, look at the game on Wednesday against Houston, where the Cavs allowed 20 offensive rebounds to the Houston Rockets. That is a ton of offensive rebounds. And then you look at Friday night's game against the Sixers, where once again, they allowed a ton of offensive rebounds. Philadelphia had 6 offensive rebounds. Kelly Oubre had 7 offensive rebounds himself. That to me is the thing that I look at and say the Cavs right now, because we know Dean Wade is obviously sort of that next man up in terms of, he's not a big, he can play the 5. And I think the Cavs are going to struggle rebounding in those lineups. And now he's hurt. So we don't know when he's going to be back. We don't know the severity of that knee injury that he left the game with on Friday. But the rebounding thing, I do think is a big issue. And Philadelphia did not do a great job of capitalizing on all of the second chance opportunities they had in this game. I believe they only had 12 second chance points, despite the fact they collected 16 offensive rebounds. So that's a pretty bad conversion rate. And the Cavs do deserve credit for being able to defend on those particular possessions for, a longer period than just getting one stop and getting the ball back. But when those things add up, it makes it more and more difficult to defend as the game goes on. And I don't think that is the issue that the Cavs should be putting blame on for what happened on Friday night, but I don't think it's nothing either. And I think part of that is outside of Jared Allen and Dean Wade and Tristan Thompson in this game, where is the size, right? Like one of the things that made what was Monday when George Niang had a great game, when he had 10 rebounds, that made that really important because the Cavs, when Evan Mobley's not playing or when Jared Allen is not playing, the Cavs need to collect some rebounds elsewhere on the roster. That's a difficult thing to do when you've got 2 smaller guards, when you've got Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. Now, those guys are both awesome, but no one's going to confuse them with great rebounders either. Donovan can certainly go up and get some rebounds at times, but neither of those guys are consistently impacting the game in that area. That's not necessarily part of what their skill set is. And then you go on the wing. Max Strus is not the biggest small forward in the world. I think he's certainly on the smaller side. He's closer to being a 2 guard. George Niang, sometimes he rebounds well, sometimes he doesn't. They just don't have, Caris LeVert is okay. Isaac Okoro, not a great rebounder. Their best wing rebounder might be Jalen Tyson, who's not in the rotation when the team is fully healthy. And that to me is something that is an issue. That to me is something that needs to be addressed, particularly when they don't have 48 minutes of a true center playing, because that's when you run into issues. And Tristan Thompson is putting forth a lot of effort, but Tristan Thompson at this point in his career is not what Tristan Thompson was in 2016. And no one thinks that, no one expects that. He's trying really hard. I give him credit. I think he's doing well for what is expected of him. But I think that when those lineups are on the floor, I think things need to be picked up by the rest of the guys on the floor. And that hasn't necessarily been the case. I do think that is an issue. I think that is something that is worth looking at. Like rebounding is an issue. I think that the Cavs miss, and it's hard for me to say they miss these guys offensively because they did score 129 points. They did hit 25 threes in this game. But I think that the additional things that they're able to do on the offensive end of the floor, when Evan Mobley in particular is out there, I think they miss that. I think that their offensive attack is just not quite as diversified when Evan Mobley is not playing, which is something that you would expect. And I do think that not having Caris LeVert out there is somebody who I think does a great job of setting this team's pace. And I think part of the issue over the course of this week, like I did not love the pace the Cavs played at on Wednesday night against Houston. The pace was a little bit off tonight just because there were so many shots made in this game and not really a ton of stops. But I think Caris does a great job of, even if he's not the best defender in the world, I think he does a really good job of, one, playing defense on the perimeter, which the Cavs need right now, and 2, creating havoc on that. Like there are going to be times where he's going to get beat, but he's going to create a lot of turnovers. And I just think that is something that the Cavs don't necessarily have a lot of, because those can lead to better offensive opportunities. And that's where you start to see these runs take place with the Cavs, where they go on the Cavalanche, which you couldn't see on Friday night because the Cavs couldn't get a stop. Everyone thinks of a Cavalanche as, oh man, the offense has come alive. The offense, they're hitting shots. This is awesome. In reality, the secret to that is what happens on defense, because they string together stops. And that is what is more, maybe not more, but just as demoralizing to opponents as making 4 threes in 6 possessions. It's the fact that in those 6 possessions, the opponent hasn't scored. That's the bigger deal there when it gets to that. And then, of course, you have to mention Dean Wade hurt his right knee in the game on Friday night. Do not know the extent of it because it's an injury, and I don't have any more information than the fact that he hurt his knee, he left the game, did not return. Going off that injury, going off that information, the fact that he was injured and did not return to this game leads me to believe he probably is not going to be able to play on Saturday against the Rockets. Of course, we'll have to wait and see. That is guessing based on the way that things happened on Friday night. The injury report, of course, will come out early Saturday afternoon as to whether or not Dean Wade will be available. Okay, that's enough bad stuff. Let's talk about Ty Jerome, because Ty Jerome had a great night and he deserves to be talked about for a little bit. So we're going to do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Talkspace. Therapy is a game changer. It can help to manage stress, improve sleep, communicate more effectively, but finding the right therapist for you and fitting sessions into what might be a pretty busy schedule can be quite a challenge. Well, that's where Talkspace comes in, because Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, makes getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. With Talkspace, signing up is simple. You can match with a licensed therapist who fits your needs, usually within 48 hours. It's pretty quick turnaround there. Plus, it's convenient. You can have sessions from the comfort of your home and even message your therapist between appointments. Plus, Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans, and for most insured members, there's a $0 copay. It's never been easier to prioritize mental health. So, as a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNBA and then enter promo code SPACE80 to match with the licensed therapist today. Again, go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNBA, LOCKEDONNBA. Then once you're there, enter promo code SPACE80, SPACE80 to get $80 off your first month. And of course, show your support for the show. That's Talkspace.com/LockedOnNBA, promo code SPACE80. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. If you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Ty Jerome was awesome in this game on Friday. And truthfully, he was a big reason why the Cavs had an opportunity down the stretch to close in on a win that truthfully they really did not deserve because of the way they play defense. So he finishes the night with a career high 33 points. He went 8 of 8 from 3-point range. I don't believe that this is the most 3-pointers that anyone has made in a single game for the Cavs. I know that there have been guys that have hit more in one single game than 8, but this is the most 3-pointers that anyone has ever made for the Cleveland Cavaliers without missing a 3-pointer. So there is a case to be made that Ty Jerome had the best 3-point shooting night in franchise history on Friday night. He was awesome. He couldn't miss. Again, 8 for 8 from beyond the arc, 11 of 14 on the night, also had 3 assists, had 3 rebounds as well. He was a big reason why the Cavs even had a chance in this game. He was awesome. Of course, he's been playing good basketball lately too. His season, I think, has been really interesting. The month of November, Ty Jerome was incredible. And then I think in December, he cooled off a bit. I think that his opportunity was lessened a little bit when Max Strus returned from his ankle injury. I just think that Ty stopped playing quite as much, and Ty didn't have maybe the same opportunity he had earlier in the season. But now with some of the injuries that Cavs are currently dealing with, including Isaac Okoro and Caris LeVert, those guys being out has meant that there's more opportunity for Ty Jerome to come in and make a bigger impact. And we saw that. I think that this was the most impactful game that he's played. You know, he's had some really good games, but this is the first time in his career that he scored 30 points in a game. 33 points is nothing to look past. This does feel like a little bit of a wasted effort because as I mentioned earlier in the show, between Ty Jerome, Donovan Mitchell, and Darius Garland, the Cavs scored 96 points. Garland was the low scorer of those three with 26. Donovan Mitchell had 37. The fact that that backcourt combined for that many points and not a single other player reached double figures. The next highest scoring player was Sam Merrill, who had 9 points, and all 9 points came within 120 seconds because he was fouled on a three-pointer, made all 3 free throws, hit a three-pointer, and then hit another three-pointer in pretty quick succession there. So the fact that they didn't have another single player reach double figures, that's kind of where this game was lost. And again, I shouldn't say that. This game was lost defensively, but Ty Jerome was, I think, the brightest spot for this Cavs team. He's not going to be this every night. He's not going to have this opportunity every night, but it is, I think, it's a bit of a bummer for the Cavs that they couldn't capitalize on Ty having as good of a game as he did and making sure that it came in a win. But they do have a chance on Saturday to bounce back. They'll take on a Houston Rockets team that is going to be rested comparatively to them. Houston has not played since the Cavs played in Houston on Wednesday, so they will be coming into this one with 2 days off. Obviously, it's the back end of a back-to-back for the Cavs. This is going to be interesting. Are they going to play defense better? How much juice are they going to have on the offensive end being the second game of a back-to-back? I think there's a lot to learn about this team on Saturday night. So I will be at that game, of course, and then I'll be with you guys afterwards. So keep it locked right here, Locked on Cavs. You can find it anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend, tell a friend. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked on Cavs content. I will be back Sunday morning after the Rockets game.